Welcome to Keep Traveling Your African Story, the only podcast that shares the real voices and journeys shaping African tourism. I'm your host, 𝐸𝐬𝐸, and through my inbound tour operation, Keep Traveling, I've had the privilege of connecting travelers from all around the world with the magic of Africa. This podcast is my way of opening that world up to you, a place to learn about the people, properties, and opportunities that make travel across this continent so very special. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Cary Costello, who's from the company Off the Beaten Path, a US-based travel company that operates throughout the world but also sends people into Africa. Cary's come on the show today to tell us about his particular experience when visiting Botswana and to share his African story. So, Cary, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here, 𝐸𝐬𝐸.
It's really nice to have you because I know a lot of my listeners come from your part of the world. You mentioned about the spectacular trip that you had in Botswana. Can you tell us, how did you plan the trip first of all, and tell us where you landed?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be able to go as part of my work through Off the Beaten Path. I'm the director of sales here, and my colleague, who's the director of trip operations, were able to go on our Botswana safari. So a 12-day trip, really just to grow our knowledge base. We're a new entrant into the safari market in terms of being a tour operator there. So to increase our knowledge and gain a better understanding of the trip and the product so that we be better at selling it and operating it. We really rely on those partners on the ground to provide us with those in-depth experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it's highly important to have those connections on the ground, otherwise you just can't get things done. So tell me about the actual planning of the flight trip across. How did you fly? Did you go through Europe? Did you fly direct?
Yeah, direct flight from Atlanta to Cape Town. So had the opportunity to spend a few nights there. Fascinating city, really enjoyed the days we had to hike Table Mountain and go to a vineyard and things like that. So a great way to kick things off before a short hop over to Maun to kick things off.
Okay. And then when you landed in Maun, you stayed at, 2 or 3 different safari lodges?
Yeah, I like how we began it because we landed in Maun and only traveled about a half hour to a camp called Thamo Telele. And that was a great place to begin because it's on a smaller private concession. So we were able to do some walking safaris safely and easily. We were able to get up close to their resident giraffe population they have there. They have just over about 20 giraffes on site, and they do some conservation projects with the giraffe population that they have. And then also seeing ostriches up close, zebras as well. For someone who had never been there before, just to be that close to getting off the plane and being in this beautiful setting where you get to see that right away, right off the bat, was a great way to start things off. We knew it was a private concession. It felt very safe, and we had a couple guides with us as well. One of them, 𝐸𝐸𝐸, I'll remember forever because he finished every sentence with yes, and it was just the personalities that we got to meet and the hospitality throughout was fantastic.
So what did you like about the walking safari? And I'm assuming that you did a driving safari. Either you've done it before or you did one on this trip. What did you take away from that walking safari experience?
Yeah, that was actually the first. We did that before we did any other game drive. As we got into the Delta and Mahadi-Hadipans National Park, it was much more of the driving safari type. So it was nice to kick things off with the walking safari, get to see things up close. You're not seeing termite mounds from 50 yards away. You're right up next to them and getting to really see the scale of them and learn about them from the guides. I think the diversity of experiences that we had on this safari was important, walking safaris being one of them. And then we can talk later about some of the things we did besides game drives too that really helped to mix things up. I don't think there's anything wrong with having game drives twice a day, each day throughout, but to have a little variety and diversity of activities, I think, allows you to connect in a different way with the destination.
Okay, and you said about the walking safari that you got up close to the termite hill, but there must have been other things that you experienced during your walking safari that you said to yourself, gee, I wouldn't have seen this from the back of a Land Rover.
Yeah, and the thing that stands out most from that was seeing some of the giraffes actually running as they had us approaching. We were still at a distance, but it's one of the most kind of elegant, beautiful things I've ever seen. Just those giant animals just gliding across the landscape and behind the trees and whatnot. I feel that was different than how we might have experienced it within a vehicle. So that's something that really resonated and stands out.
And something that I always like to bring up because people just don't give them enough credit for is people always talk about the big five. and everyone's coming to Africa for the big five, but people very seldom talk about the little five and the ugly five. But in this particular instance, I want to talk about the little five because they're such an important part of Africa as a whole and safari, and people just don't give them enough credit. Did you get to experience the little five at all? How's your knowledge on that?
You'll have to refresh my memory on what the little five is. I do remember it coming up and the ugly five. So yeah, refresh my memory, please.
Okay, so the little five are all renditions from the big five. You've got the rhino beetle, you've got the elephant shrew, you've got the buffalo weaver, which is a bird. You have the leopard tortoise and the lion ant.
Okay.
And they are quite amazing. People will go through all their safaris as many times as they come to Africa, and they're not seeing these animals. And they have their own sort of little biosphere, if you like, and really quite important and really quite amazing to look at. The ugly five, you have, of course, the wildebeest.
Yes,
the warthog, hyena, the marabou stork. Then there is a couple of options for the fifth one, but generally it's the hooded vulture, which would be the fifth one. I always like to bring these up because they're really important, and I think people just don't give them enough credit. Did you get to see this at all during your time in Botswana?
We saw the ugly five for sure. Yeah, all in spades. And actually, coming away from the safari, I think the warthog was my favorite animal to view. I really enjoyed seeing them, especially when they'd just stare at you for a little while and then they'd run off in the way that they do with their tail up and whatnot. So that was one of my favorite sightings on the whole trip, and thankfully we got to see probably 100 of them over the course of our week plus there. And the other thing that really caught me by surprise was just how much I enjoyed the birding aspect of it. We probably saw close to 200 species easy in the time we were there. Got some wonderful photos of them as well. A lilac-breasted roller stands out. The southern bee eater are another ones that we saw. So, I'm not much of a birder here in the States, but it is something I'm more interested in. We have bald eagles everywhere we look out here in Montana, which is great. But that was something that took me by surprise, was just how much I enjoyed that aspect of it. Really, no matter where you looked, you didn't need to see some of the big five to enjoy your day. There was plenty to look at, even with just the birds.
So tell me a little bit about the actual accommodation that you stayed, your first stopover. What were the amenities like? And I hate to say this, but people are forever thinking about their stomach. So you got to tell me a little bit about the food that they served you.
So Thamo, Telele, within a half hour of the Maun airport. I'd say simple kind of raised tent accommodations. It was one of the only properties where we were able to walk to and from our tent without an escort because of the private concession nature of it. There's no big cats there or anything. I remember walking to the main tent from where we slept, and just a huge swarm of birds just making this beautiful kind of echo noise as they flew by, and that's something that stands out from the journey. But the food there was great, I think, because of its location, and everybody had obviously locals that were working there, local Botswana people. Because Maun, the main frontier town there, is so close, the food there I think was very representative of the local food culture there. Some pounded beef and different starches and things like that. The food never disappointed. Each camp had a little bit of a different take on it, but I would say this one at Thamo Telele was the most local in terms of where it drew its influences from.
Okay. And then from the first camp to the second camp, you transversed how?
We drove a few hours east of there to Meno Kwena camp, right on the edge of Mahadi Pans National Park. And Meno was unbelievable because of its location perched on a bluff above the Boteti River. We got there, and being a first-time traveler on a safari, it fit my eye in terms of what I expected, with these different tents spread out, a nice fire pit. But then you could see the edge of the bluff that overlooked the river, and it was really breathtaking walking to the edge of that and then seeing herds of elephant below feeding from the watering hole they had there on site. That was a moment that really stands out as a highlight of the trip, just that first glimpse of elephants out in the bush from where your tent was overlooking and from the main public areas at the camp as well.
I just want to touch on the amenities again, because we have this grading council type scenario where something's a 4-star, something's a 5-star, and something's a 6-star, etc.
Sure.
How do you try to sell something that the actual amenities might not be like you walking into the Ritz Hotel, but the experience, like what you're talking about when you walk to the edge of that particular path, How do you sell that as a 6-star experience, having stayed in maybe a 4-star property where you're literally just using that bedroom as a bed?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and actually something that really resonates with our off the beaten path style. And that is that the luxury isn't the thread count or the spa offerings, it's the location. And also the warmth and hospitality of the staff there as well. That's something we truly believe in, is to be able to connect to the soul of a place. You need to have those elements that aren't about the things that can come with a 4-season stay, but rather the expertise of the guides and the generosity of spirit from everybody you interact with, while also having very comfortable accommodations and a bar with gin and tonics at every opportunity. That doesn't hurt either. But really, that location is key to that. When we do trips here in Yellowstone National Park, we have those relationships that allow us to stay within the park, so you have less time driving to and from. But there is no 4 seasons within Yellowstone, not even close. But being in the shadow of Old Faithful as you wake up is the experience that we want to provide to people.
Listen, I think a gin and tonic's going to taste the same wherever it's coming out of, as long as it's cold and it's got a piece of lemon and a bit of fruit. So the food across your trip, you have no issues or anything stand out, no problems as far as that was concerned?
Not at all. Well fed throughout. 2 breakfasts on some day as you wake up at camp before you head out at sunrise, and then 1 out in the field as well. Meno 𝐸 Kwena was great because it's very close to a local community and offers job opportunities through the town of 𝐸𝐸. So that also was very local in nature in terms of the cuisine. And maybe it's not for everybody, or they might think it's adventurous, but it really isn't. You really have to, that's one way you experience the culture of the place as well, is through the cuisine. So to have more of those local touches, I thought was really great.
So you stayed at 3 different properties?
4, actually.
4 different properties.
4 before Victoria Falls was the 5th.
Before Victoria Falls. And for those 4, what was that, 2 nights at each place, 2-3 nights at each place?
Only 1 at Thamo Telele on the front end.
Okay.
Smaller concession,
Sure.
not as much to see and do there.
Sure.
And then, 2 at Meno 𝐸 Kwena, and then 3 at 𝐸𝐸, which is out in the Delta.
Yes.
And then 3 at Expeditions Camp, which used to be more of a mobile camp, but has found more of a permanent home in the northern part of the Delta. Pacing of the trip was really important. You don't want to be moving every day. Obviously, logistics of moving in Botswana can be a challenge. We flew between 2 of the camps as well. So having 2 nights, 3 nights, 3 nights to finish out the trip really allowed you to be comfortable, immersed, take your time, and get to experience the area.
If you had to do that trip again, or you were doing it for a client, or you were suggesting it for people that are listening, would you suggest the 2-night? What about just staying at 2 different places? What was the difference besides the actual architecture of the properties and besides the landscape? Did you see different animals in the different properties, or was it much of a muchness?
I don't want to discount the diversity of the landscapes as well, because that was really one of the highlights, was seeing all of the different things there. And obviously the Delta, I think, was the highlight. 𝐸𝐸 was really unique because you had only 2 safari vehicles as part of our group, but you also had 3 or 4 different Land Cruisers out there. So we had more eyes out there to be able to find where those big cats were, which really proved fruitful and made those game drives really productive. I would say that there was a big difference in the animals that you'd see places. On the edge of Mahadi Pans, there are lions there. We heard them each night, but we didn't see them during the day because it's a much hotter, drier landscape compared to the Delta. So that was one big difference. We saw more of a diversity of water antelope in the northern part of Expeditions Camp as well. So that was really interesting. But then 𝐸𝐸 on that concession, the real highlight there was the big cats, and we had some amazing leopard and lion sightings.
That's fantastic. I think maybe you did answer my question when I said, would you do those sort of time frames again? 3 nights is a good number at one place.
I do think 3 is important. I would want to do at least 3 camps as well, just to achieve that diversity. You could do it with 2. I think you would want to prioritize some of those that give you a little more bang for your buck if you just did 2. But 2 over 7 nights, I think, would be a perfectly fine trip. We own a raft and go on a lot of multi-day river trips myself here in the States, and that style of travel is really something that resonates most with me because it takes a couple days to get into the rhythm of the day. And I felt the safari experience was very similar to a multi-day rafting trip, something I didn't necessarily expect. By the 3rd day at 𝐸𝐸 camp, you're up at 5:30 in the morning, you're seeing just the gorgeous sunrise, and there's just that excitement as you go out on the drive. Come back, have a nice lunch and rest for a few hours during the hottest part of the day. I was there in October, so the tail end of the dry season, which was pretty warm, and then back out after high tea for an evening drive. I don't think you're going to really be able to get in the groove of things if you're moving every other day, or if you only have 4 days for the trip. I think you really need that 7+.
How did you feel as far as like on the medical side, the malaria, the yellow fever? Do you think these kinds of things prohibit people from your part of the world traveling to Africa?
Boy, I would hope it doesn't, because it's a pretty easy thing to overcome in terms of modern medicine. The malaria pills knocked my stomach sideways for 24 hours, but after that, it was easy. And I don't recall even seeing a mosquito the whole time we were there. I think that had something to do with the season we were in as well. But in terms of safety, it's an interesting question, because one thing I wasn't prepared for going into it, and actually one thing we shared, the guide could have maybe done a better job preparing us for, is just how close you were able to get to these big cats, especially, all while feeling very safe. I've been to Denali and seen grizzlies up there, and I know that they think of the buses up there as not a threat at all, so they're not concerned about it, but that's an enclosed vehicle. The Land Cruisers was very different being out in that landscape, and in Yellowstone National Park, you're never getting that close to a grizzly. If you are, there's something wrong, and you're not feeling safe. So to be able to be within 10 yards of a lion and their cubs walking by and having them really not care about your presence whatsoever was surprising, exciting, and at the same time felt very safe.
And I know that you ended your trip off with a stopover in Victoria Falls. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit why you decided to include Victoria Falls. I'm thinking maybe because of the rafting that you like doing back home, and you wanted to raft the Zambezi River as well.
That actually is not a part of it, but I did get to do that, which I'm very thankful I did. So our core off the beaten path safari trip is a 12-day program with the last 2 nights at Victoria Falls. And going back to our trip planning process for that and coordinating, I think the reason why we chose to use that as the endpoint for the trip is that this is the one safari that our company offers. So we wanted people to experience the best safari trip they could. We chose Botswana because of its less capacity, lower impact, higher touch experience type trips that it can offer compared to, say, East Africa. So that kind of pointed us towards Botswana. And then once we honed in on that, what's the best experience we can provide to our guests? And I think because you're so close to it and it's such a highlight for people and such a well-known destination, incorporating it into the itinerary pretty seamlessly in terms of flying out to 𝐝𝐴𝐴𝐴 from that northern camp in the 𝐽𝐽𝑒𝑉𝑎nga was super easy. So logistics-wise, not a challenge at all. And a little bit of a culture shock, I would say, coming out of 2 camps in the Delta to Victoria Falls itself. But we had lovely accommodations right near the falls and beautiful viewpoints of the falls during the dry season. You can see more of the area, less of the mist. So I think that was the main reason. But I did extend with my coworker to do a day trip on the Zambezi.
You said you were only in Vic Falls for 2 nights. I maintain, I've done Vic Falls many times, and I maintain actually Victoria Falls has actually become a place where you can almost spend like a week there. Just to get to see everything. It's almost like Las Vegas. In other words, if people go to Las Vegas, they don't just go for the casinos. It might have been like that before, but now there's so much more to do. And it's the same with Victoria Falls. Yes, it's not on such a grand scale as Las Vegas. But would you concur that you could do a 7-day trip into Victoria Falls alone?
Yeah, I definitely do. We went on a river cruise on the Chobe River from 𝐝𝐴𝐴𝐴 before we got to Victoria Falls. We focused our time there on visiting the falls itself. We actually did a village visit as well, which was very interesting to get more of the people side of these places and get to know that side of it. Certainly with options on the Zambezi above the falls in terms of safaris there. And I know there's other kind of day trips you can do to different parts. I think that'd be a great way to approach it as well.
Yeah, we got the bungee jumping and the jet boating, a lot of stuff I wouldn't personally do, but just a lot to do there in the town itself.
Sure, helicopter tours, and had a lovely dinner at the Victoria Falls Hotel. What a beautiful building that is. So yeah, definitely would recommend it.
Those helicopters, did that get to you a little bit, the sound going sort of 24/7?
It didn't really bother me, but I could see how it might for some, but I wouldn't say it was that prominent of my experience or my memories there.
Cary, any sort of last thoughts that you might want to share with the audience about people wanting to plan a trip, a safari into Africa? What would your top 3 recommendations be for those people?
Just to start, I'm so thankful for the opportunity. It really wasn't on my bucket list of things to do. So to get to go on this 12-day trip was really a special moment. I was able to go with my sister as well, which is great. In terms of the recommendations, I think mixing it up with a variety of different camps is important. I think that not only diversity of camps and landscapes, but the experiences too. One thing we haven't talked about was towards the northern part in the Delta, we were in a great location for some non-game drive activities. So we were able to go out in a mokoro as well as take a jet boat on one of the kind of fingers of the river to get really up close to some great birding and just see the landscape from a different angle. I think that would be important too. I would encourage people to not just focus on the game drive focused activities each day. I think that helps to mix it up. And then the third thing is be open to the people side of it. I've mentioned before, just that warmth and hospitality from everybody I came across on the trip is something I'll remember as much as the sightings that we had. Interact with the staff and make sure you give them a smile back because they're going to give it to you every time they see you.
Yeah, listen, I can't agree with you more. I'm not just pumping this because I'm an African, but the Africans are just really fantastic people, fun-loving and easygoing and like to make people happy, especially visitors from outside of the different countries or the continent. Cary, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your little African story today.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you so much, Cary, for sharing your story and for everything you're doing to grow African tourism. Don't forget, every week we feature fantastic prize giveaways from some of Africa's most beautiful lodges, camps, and travel partners. You could win your own unforgettable getaway just by listening, subscribing, or visiting www.keeptraveling.africa/podcast, or read more about today's guest by scanning through the show notes of today's episode. Don't forget to follow Keep Traveling on social media for the latest episodes, stories, and travel inspiration. I'm 𝐸𝐿𝐸𝐸, and this has been Keep Traveling, your African story. Remember, a few years from now, you won't remember how much it cost you, but you'll always remember the memories you made. Keep traveling.